Welcome to the BLC Digital Strategy Studio here in Tysons, Virginia, in the Washington, D.C. region. I'm Seth Berenzweig. I'm a founding and managing partner of Berenzweig Leonard. We're a business law firm, and I am delighted to kick off a very interesting and timely podcast today with some tremendous speakers that I will introduce in a moment. Today we are discussing landing business opportunities between the United States and the Middle East. We are in a vastly changing landscape. Things are literally changing every day. It reminds me of the old saying by Leonard that says, years can pass without much history changing, and then a year's worth of history can happen in a week. We're living in the latter, and from a business standpoint, it's critical to be able to connect with business professionals who can be able to describe these kinds of opportunities. I'm honored to be here today to be with two representatives, including the principal of Pivot Consulting. It is a international consulting business with locations in both the United States and in Israel. And I'm going to defer to our esteemed members to be able to kick off the discussion. You would much rather be interested in hearing from them than me. So in order for us to just jump right into it, I'm going to turn this timely conversation over to Martha Mashav. Martha.
Seth, thank you so much. That was a nice intro. It's always so nice to be with you and Yossi. I think we can say that, yeah, we're definitely in an era of a new era of diplomacy and opportunity in the Middle East. It's a transformative moment. The Middle East is undergoing significant shifts that are marked by unprecedented diplomatic engagements and political realignments. These changes they're opening up new avenues for economic collaboration and investment across the region. And so I want to give a brief overview of the geopolitical status in the region, focusing on Israel's neighbors. So basically on Lebanon and Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and then I'll touch a little bit on the UAE and Saudi Arabia. But I'll start with Syria. It's the one that has undergone in the last year, I think it's safe to say the biggest surprise moment, and it's gone from isolation to engagement since the ousting of President Bashar al-Assad 5 months ago. It really is a case study in how dictatorships have this tendency to crumble very slowly and then all at once. And since December, the new president, Ahmed al-Shara, has been positioning himself as a moderate, and he's been pursuing reforms to stabilize the economy and attract investment and rebuild infrastructure. Syria and Israel, right now they're in direct talks, and they're focusing on border security and on reducing tensions. And so it truly has been a historic breakthrough that's been facilitated and supported by the US and the UAE. Of course, Israel remains cautious because of the history of hostility and the current composition of Syria's interim government, which is predominantly composed of individuals affiliated to HTS, which is a group with a long history of Islamist militancy. So, with respect to Syria, we're still in a bit of a wait and see situation. Moving on to Lebanon, which is on Israel's northern border, but also sharing a long border with Syria. Lebanon is unfortunately, it has a less promising future. It continues to face security and political challenges, in addition to grappling with a severe financial crisis since 2019 that was exacerbated in 2020 with a huge port explosion, and then in 2023 with Hezbollah joining Hamas in attacking Israel. The nation has been in a state of economic stagnation due to corruption and mismanagement, and the future of the state would look grim, except that there's I'd say a tiny glimmer of hope in that in January earlier this year, there was a new president and prime minister elected, and they seem to be committed to financial reforms and economic reconstruction and on implementing UN resolutions to stabilize the borders. But again, it's a very fragile state. Israel and Lebanon do not maintain formal diplomatic relations. And the recent developments, they indicate a pragmatic and direct cooperation, particularly concerning the southern Lebanon and Hezbollah's presence there. The Lebanese armed forces, following the ceasefire in November with Israel, after Israel practically decimated the terrorist group Hezbollah, the LAF, they've undertaken efforts to reassert state control over southern Lebanon, and this region, as we know, has been dominated by Hezbollah. But Hezbollah still maintains a presence there, and their position is that they're only willing to disarm if there's a complete withdrawal of the Israeli forces from southern Lebanon, which is not going to happen. Israel, the IDF, it's still deployed to strategic posts several hundred meters inside of southern Lebanon, and the IDF continues to target Hezbollah operatives there. And so it is quite a tenuous ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. And so Lebanon, I think in some we can say it's a fragile state. The recovery there is likely to be slow and gradual. Moving on to Jordan, it's a much more optimistic outlook. Jordan is a reliable, pragmatic regional stabilizer. Just to get into a little bit of the history, it's Jordan, after Israel, is considered our closest ally in the Middle East. The U.S. has provided military and economic assistance to Jordan since the 1970s, and our ties strengthened in 94 after Jordan's peace treaty with Israel, and then even more after 9/11, when Jordan became a critical partner in counterterrorism and in intelligence sharing and regional diplomacy. The U.S. designated Jordan a major non-NATO ally in 2011, and really we the U.S. view Jordan as a linchpin of stability in what has historically been a volatile region. So it continues to serve as a key stabilizing force in the region. It's deepened ties with Gulf states, deepened ties with Israel, focusing on economic growth and tourism and trade. And King Abdullah has actively curtailed the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood, although concerns about internal unrest, they persist due to the Muslim Brotherhood's connections to Iran. Regionally, Jordan also has to contend with the growing Iranian influence in Iraq, with which it shares a border, and also within its own borders. So there certainly are uncertainties surrounding Syria's political future as well. And of the three borders, Israel really is the quietest and the most stable. Again, we would characterize this border as stable, cooperative. The two countries, Israel and Jordan, they share a very long history of cooperating closely, albeit quietly. Recently, there have been attempts by Islamist extremist groups to exploit this corridor, and Israel has reinforced its security posture along that long border. They're reinforcing it with advanced surveillance, upgraded barriers, tight coordination with Jordanian security forces, which Yossi, I'm sure, will discuss. But yeah, it's a border of strategic importance, and it really is a symbol of Jordan's peace treaty with Israel, and the border is critical for trade and water sharing. So the main risks to look out for there are potential extremist infiltration, which Israel and Jordan are both on top of, and tensions related to the West Bank and unrest there in Judea and Samaria. But overall, Jordan really is like the most manageable and secure frontier with Israel. I won't get into details on Syria and Iraq. Those borders are somewhat, or quite, in the case of Syria, they're unstable and volatile. So yeah, the strongest and most optimistic border to look at is the one with Israel. Moving on to Egypt, on Israel's southern border, we can say Egypt really is a strategic mediator and regional stabilizer. And despite current diplomatic tensions, the long-term trajectory of Israeli-Egyptian relations remains fundamentally stable and strategically vital for both countries. The 1979 peace treaty, it's weathered decades of regional upheaval, and yet both sides continue to recognize the mutual benefits of security cooperation, especially in the spheres of counterterrorism operations in the Sinai, and in efforts to rebuild and stabilize Gaza. So looking ahead, I'd say there are clear avenues for renewed cooperation and even deeper engagement between Israel and Egypt. They have shared security interests. Both of them face common threats from extremist groups and regional instability. And this creates a durable foundation for continued military and intelligence coordination. They do share, they do have close intelligence cooperation, coordination. On energy and infrastructure, Egypt and Israel are natural partners in the Eastern Mediterranean in the energy market, and they're expanding cooperation in natural gas exports and regional infrastructure projects like electricity interconnectors or ports. Those hold long-term promise. Egypt really has a unique role as a mediator between Israel and the Palestinians to ensure its continued relevance in regional diplomacy. And this gives Egypt and Israel a reason to maintain open channels, even during tense periods. And really, truly, even as Egypt sort of plays this tug of war with Qatar over which of the two will be a more influential mediator on the Palestinian issue. So for Egypt, I'd summarize by saying that while tactical disagreements do flare up every now and again, the strategic logic of peace and partnership between those two countries remains intact. And so opportunities for cooperation are likely to continue growing as both countries look toward regional integration and economic modernization. I'll finish with Israel, which really is the U.S.'s closest and most reliable partner in the Middle East. Um, and I'll just touch a little bit on Israel's geopolitical stance in the region. Again, Israel's our closest and most reliable partner in the Middle East, and yes, it faces real challenges from Iran, from Hezbollah. Not as much anymore from Hezbollah, but Israel continues to face those in the north, and then of course the situation in Gaza in the south, and from Iran, absolutely from Iran. But it remains the pillar of stability and innovation in what has been a volatile region. And behind the scenes, key players like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, they're increasingly aligned with Israel on security and regional integration. And so there's real momentum toward Saudi normalization as well through the Abraham Accords. And we remain hopeful for the return of the hostages. Actually, just a few minutes ago, just before this talk, we we saw in the news that Israel Netanyahu just agreed to Witkoff's proposal. So we've seen this before, but we're always hopeful that this time will be the time that we actually are seeing the hostages out of Gaza. And while Israel continues to wrestle with internal debates at home, particularly over the issues like Haredi military service and just broader influence of the ultra-Orthodox in public life, Israel remains a vibrant, well-functioning democracy. Its institutions are strong. Its civil society is active, and its courts, its media, and its elections remain independent and credible. And so, in short, Israel really stands out as a place of opportunity for business, for investment, and for meaningful long-term partnerships with obviously with the U.S., but of course with its regional allies.
Great. Thank you. You covered a lot of geography and ground there. It reminds me and it points out why Pivot is such an interesting and essential partner for folks to consider when looking to do business in the Middle East, because understanding the current levels and temperature of the geopolitics and the business opportunities on the ground, as we just learned, is an essential component. There are a lot of opportunities, and I'd just like to kind of pick up the discussion from here. We are just a few days out from President Trump exploring a number of these opportunities. He went to the Middle East. He visited a number of countries in the Arab world, and he loves to talk about deals. And he and his representatives really had a lot of developments. We know that there are new opportunities for construction and business in the Middle East, and it's certainly going to increasingly be so over the coming weeks and months. In order for us to understand this from a business and plug-in perspective and to drill down a little bit more, what I wanted to do from a business perspective is to share some data with you. If I pick up a piece of paper here, it's to be able to just read some very specific data that I pulled. Some idea. What I'm going to be presenting my thoughts essentially in three stages, and you can conceive it being essentially in the form of a funnel. In the top of the funnel, as I'll discuss, is the need to address what we call the TAM, the total addressable market. We'll be bringing that into a perspective of dollars in a minute. The second sense of drilling down is then to understand within that addressable market, what are the opportunities for your business, depending upon what industry you're focusing on. And then the third level that I'll drill further down into is the legal aspect. In terms of the legal plugins, what legal carburetors, if you will, are going to be plugging into the engine to be able to get up and go. So first, let's start on the first step, the total addressable market. The data that I have been able to confirm as a quick snapshot to give you an idea of what kind of dollars we're talking about. Let's talk about two snapshots. The first snapshot that I'll present to you are upcoming contracts with just the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, opportunities expected in the Middle East within the next 12 to 18 months, specifically including Egypt, Israel, Kuwait, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia. There are, for example, under that lens, 13 upcoming contractual opportunities. The total contract value just under this lens, under those parameters, is $3 billion. That's with a B. So if you look at it just with regard to that one federal agency in that one region, within that one window, that's a total addressable market and specific total contract value presently of $3 billion. Let's take another lens to look down at this. I also printed out here anticipated construction-related contract opportunities expected within the Middle East within the next 12 to 18 months, including Egypt, Israel, Kuwait, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. These demonstrate a total contract value of approximately $4 billion. Again, that's with a B. And when you take a look at it under that lens, and then you peel back the layers of the onion, you have Defense Department, meaning Army, Navy, logistics, construction, all aspects under construction, which can also mean infrastructure for telecommunications, construction for food services and supplies. So suffice it to say that from a level one analysis, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar marketplace, total addressable market opportunity within just the 12 to 18 months. And those are just for procurements that have been announced thus far. As we know, the facts on the ground will change within 30 days from now, so that number, if I had to think in terms of trends, is only going to go up. So the second layer of the analysis in terms of drilling down is then to ask yourself, okay, so from an industry standpoint, what does this mean to me? What it means from here in our backyard in the Washington, D.C. area is to understand how to be able to drill into that to see how that opportunity fits in with your business. So let's say you would say, our company builds bridges, and another company says we build hospitals, and then another company says we build telecom infrastructure, and then another company says we develop AI infrastructure and capabilities. There are opportunities to be able to drill into that you can identify in the databases flowing through the agencies here in Washington, D.C., and in the outerlying areas immediately in our backyard here in Washington, where you can look at within the total addressable market, what are the industry opportunities that you want to be able to drill into? And then you can look at that and then get further detail in terms of how you would like to target and land those business opportunities. Now, going to the third level of the analysis, this is where I would say that the legal beagles kind of jump into the sandbox because there are a couple of further details that you need to plug into the engine in order for the car to go. What do I mean by that? Working with your legal counsel, you want to work with someone who can demystify the procurement rules, the rules of federal government contracting. As many of you may know, there is a set of regulations under what we call the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, which, by the way, may change later this year, given a dictate from the administration. However, suffice it to say that understanding and demystifying how those federal procurement rules of the road work is something that turns those into opportunities to be able to maximize. Aside from the government contract legal piece is what I call the corporate transactional piece. What do I mean by that? Working with your professional consultants, among others on the legal side, to understand how can we build the plane for takeoff, how to be able to plug in the teaming agreements, the joint venture agreements, the consulting and employment agreements that plug in so that the plane can take off. The solicitations at times will identify for you what kind of structure the government is looking for. They may want a small business mentor-protege joint venture relationship. They may want to have an open competition under what's called a best value trade-off. These are things that come in different shades of gray, but they ultimately end up in the shade of green, if you will, because there is a definite pathway here in the Washington metropolitan area, provided I think that you also have, a broader team with great international business consultants, such as the blue chip team, for example, at Pivot, to be able to understand how to plug these pieces in. So we understand from looking at it from this perspective, what is the total addressable market? How do you drill down into your particular industry? And then how do you put those pieces in? You don't want to build the plane while you're in flight. You want to be able to get everything out ahead of time. And one of the advantages of that, from both a business and a legal standpoint, is that you want to be able to demonstrate to the selecting officials that your team is ready and your organization is tight. That's where your legal and otherwise professional business consultants can help you put that into place to give yourself the best opportunity for success. And I've never seen an opportunity, for example, in the Middle East, which is just one of the areas, but we're focusing on that today because we can't boil the whole ocean in one broadcast. But it's just so fascinating to just take one final step back and one final point before I kick it over to our friend Yossi, to see these opportunities in such a rapidly changing business environment. As Martha noted, there are things that are rapidly changing on the ground. Who would have believed 6 months ago that we'd be talking about Syria? Who would have believed that months before we would be talking about reconstruction in Gaza, for example? There's going to be a lot of opportunities. Those will be growing. I expect those trends will provide further granularity to the numbers that we talked about today, so those opportunities can further open. Now, as we continue to drill down, you need someone with boots on the ground who knows a lot and how to be able to proceed down that path. And with that, let me kick it over to Yossi.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Martha, for the inside information on the region. At the end, when Martha explains the regional challenges and the landscape and the really geopolitical components, and there are so many key players in our region. And when you give this from a high level but very detailed legal perspective that I thank God I'm not an attorney, it only makes me understand better our role, and it was proven from the beginning of this war as well. At the end, we are here to help companies and executive to capitalize on a scalable contract in the region. Okay, we're doing that by being a tier one, multiple layer provider that can support the boots on the ground for any company who comes to operate in Israel. I like to think of us as problem solvers. And I think that a good problem solver knows to solve a problem before it turns into a problem. And by having somebody who's able to speak both languages and interject with the Israeli co-partners and with the American or other foreign partners, you can make up a lot of, or basically avoid a lot of problems and intrusion along a contract from happening. So I think that it's very essential and necessary for companies to actually explore having that layer on additional to other components that they bring to play when they come to contract in the Middle East specifically, because the Middle East is a different animal in that sense. So I think that, what we can be most valuable for a joint venture between American companies exploring businesses in Israel or in the region is the fact that we can mitigate the cultural gaps. And the cultural gaps are a part of every layer and every step of doing business between Americans and other countries in the region, if we be specific with Israeli companies. And take that, add to that the very complex environment that we operate in, and you have something that can very easily go south. And we are here to try to help and mitigate that, eliminate that as much as possible. And we do it with multiple layers of services that we can provide to American companies and other companies coming to explore this region. And if we talk specifically with reference to Israel, I think that the first one is to identify the right partners for any contract. How does an American prime contract needing a sub in Israel knows if that sub is the right fit for him? Who does the vetting process for them? Who does the auditing for them? Who knows if this contract is to build takeoff pads for choppers? Maybe the contractor never done it in his life, or maybe he's the most expert in this field and industry in Israel. So how do we help them find the exact perfect fit to fit their criteria, which will eventually, as experience taught us, will be able to give them higher percentage to win a bid and accept the contract in Israel. So that's a very major component of it. The other element is all the legal and the bureaucracy. And God bless, Israel has a lot of bureaucracy. When you want to come and operate in Israel, between the DOD and the MOD, you have a lot of bureaucracy you need to handle. So that's from a contract perspective, but it's also the manpower and employees contracting. When you work with an Israeli sub, who then he needs to bring another sub who's covering the prime contractor. Work visas. Every American company comes to work in Israel, they need work visas. So we have that service as part of our umbrella from the legal perspective. And then, all the operational components, because at the end, there is a project and there is a staff, and they have services from a very high level. They need medical services. They need mapping and aerial services. They need control and monitoring services. They need maybe drone services. We don't know under which circumstances and within which area are they operating. We need to be able to provide them the best and most adequate operational environment to operate in and to be most effective to meet their timelines. We know that timelines are a very key component of the DoD operation and the MOD in Israel. We know how project can get scattered and delayed, and we want to try to avoid it. We have a very vast logistic support, if it's from anything regarding to supplies, food and water delivery to any point and any point needed, transportation, whether it's for the sub, whether it's for the prime, whether it's for whoever needs it, who's relevant to the timeline of this operation. And transportation, I'm not limiting myself just to, let's say, when you think operation, I'm not limiting myself just to trucks. It can be aerial, it can be maritime, any type and kind of operation. And transportation, accommodation, okay? At the end, I came across a couple of cases where the project was south and the accommodation that were provided were in the center of Tel Aviv. And then people need to spend 2 hours each way in the morning to get to their site and back. And that's a lack of efficiency of their time, just because of lack of knowledge, not because of anything else. Just because somebody told them, hey, don't sleep in Chulon, go and sleep in Netivot. You'll be much closer to where you need to get your people every day. And that's money for the contract. everything related to gas, water, electric generators that needs to be placed and function on offsites in the middle of the desert or wherever may be, whatever we need to set up, we can help solve and mitigate that gaps as well. Another very important component is actually the security of your man. And if it's providing with armed security staff, whether it's providing your staff with defense and tactical gear and equipment, whether it's providing a drone or any airborne application to enhance the security, physical security while on the roads or while going to meetings in more delicate areas, Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, some of the surrounding areas of Jerusalem, some of the surrounding area of the Gaza envelope. So all those components, they also plug in as a part of things that we can provide those clients with. And of course, technological support, which is, starting from making sure that we have the right input of power electric wherever needed to support any kind of technological system that we have in place, cyber solutions that we need to provide. There are delicate materials, there are sensitive materials being shared. There should be a level of cyber protection there against any and all kind of intruders. Israel experiencing tens of thousands of cyber attempts daily. You don't need necessarily to be the target. You can be after the fact, a somebody in the chain, but you can get severely hurt. So you need to have those components also plugged in. So with that cybersecurity to protect your software and anything in that sort. And at the end, you need a boots on the ground. You need somebody that if you have a problem, you can call at any time and he will get you the problem solved. And when I say problem, I'll give you a very simple example. This lady who was a part of an American contractor operating in Israel drove from the south, from Mitzpe Ramon towards Beersheba. She got stuck with a flat tire at 11 p.m. Who does she call? What does she do? Problems don't need to be severe problems. But when you send people to work overseas, you got to make sure that every sense of what is important to them is being taken care of. And when she has a dispatch center to call, to have somebody with her on the phone until she waits to get herself picked up, to have the car taken care of, and in the morning to have a different car waiting for her to get to work, this is valuable. Now, the after fact of all those components I just mentioned is actually when companies do that and they use this vast amount of services. Now, again, it's not one solution fits all for all kind of contractors, but I think it opens the American clients who operate in Israel to very interesting investment opportunities as well while they're actually conducting work there. I'm sure if you have more input on that, but with this, I turn it back to you, Seth.
Thank you so much. And I think that the viewers can see why our law firm is so excited to be aligned with Pivot Consulting, because they do such a great job. And the thing that I find so interesting about this conversation as we wrap up today is that, keep in mind, we only talked about the Middle East. There are other parts of the world where they also operate. But we have to take the elephant one bite at a time, as they say. As Martha has helped us understand, there are rapidly changing facts on the ground. Understanding what the temperature is in terms of the geopolitics in the regions is essential. As I covered, there are many industry opportunities within the government. As one of my colleagues likes to say, the government buys everything from toilets to tanks. So how to drill into that market is something that's very interesting. And as Yossi has helped us explain, having boots on the ground and having all of the myriad of local assets is something that is also very essential to have business success. Thank you so much to our friends at Pivot, and thank you to the viewers who have joined us today. We will continue to keep an eye on developments as things arise. And thanks again for joining us for this really interesting conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.